My name is Eleanor, and for 15 years, I've been the night janitor at Harrington Financial Group. The executives barely notice me as I empty their trash bins and mop their floors. They've dismissed me as just another invisible elderly woman, someone beneath their notice, beneath their respect. What they don't know is that I own 22% of their company's stock. I've been silently attending every board meeting for years, watching how they operate from the shadows. Last week, they tried to push through a merger that would have eliminated 300 jobs, including mine. That's when I decided it was time to step out of the shadows and reveal who I really am. What happened next shocked everyone in the boardroom and changed the course of the company forever. If you've ever been underestimated because of your age or position, you know the quiet fury of being dismissed by those who think they're better than you. On this channel, I share stories of people who found strength in moments when others thought they were powerless. Subscribe now to join our community of survivors and fighters who refuse to be invisible, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story of triumph against the odds. My name is Eleanor Blackwood, and I'm 73 years old. I'm sitting here in my study, looking out over the Boston Harbor as the evening lights begin to sparkle across the water. It's a far cry from the janitor's closet where I spent so many nights over the past 15 years. That's right. Until 3 months ago, I was the night cleaning lady at Harrington Financial Group, one of the largest investment firms in New England. 5 nights a week, I would put on my gray uniform, pull my silver hair back into a practical bun, and push my cleaning cart through the gleaming hallways of their downtown headquarters. The executives barely acknowledged my existence. To them, I was just part of the building's infrastructure, as invisible as the air ducts or electrical wiring. When they worked late, they would talk around me, through me, as if I wasn't even there. Sometimes they would complain about their multi-million-dollar bonuses being insulting while I silently emptied their trash. Occasionally, they would make jokes about my age or my occupation, never bothering to lower their voices because to them, I didn't matter enough to consider my feelings. I remember one night in particular, about 5 years ago. I was cleaning the executive conference room after a late strategy meeting. 3 young vice presidents had stayed behind, drinking scotch from the bar cabinet and loosening their expensive ties. "Did you see that old lady shuffling through the hallway earlier?" one of them said, unaware that I was in the supply closet just off the main room. "The cleaning lady with the bun?" "The one who looks like she's about to keel over," another replied, laughing. "Yeah, what about her?" I was thinking that's what happens when you don't plan for retirement. You end up 70 years old and scrubbing toilets for people half your age. They all laughed, clinking their crystal tumblers. "Maybe we should use her in our retirement planning brochures," the third one suggested. "Invest with Harrington or end up like Eleanor." More laughter. I stood perfectly still in that closet, listening to these young men mock not just me, but every older person working a service job to make ends meet. I could have walked out, confronted them, embarrassed them, but I didn't. I waited until they left, then finished cleaning the room they had further messed up with their expensive scotch and careless crumbs. What none of them knew, what none of them ever bothered to find out, was that I, Eleanor Blackwood, owned 22% of Harrington Financial Group stock. I was, in fact, their largest individual shareholder, and my net worth was more than all 3 of those young vice presidents combined. You're probably wondering how a night janitor came to own such a significant stake in a billion-dollar company. That story begins 45 years ago when I was a young financial analyst with dreams of breaking through the glass ceiling. I graduated from Radcliffe College in 1975 with a degree in economics. Despite having the highest grades in my class, I struggled to find a job on Wall Street. This was before laws against gender discrimination had any real teeth, and investment firms weren't shy about telling me directly that they didn't hire women for those positions. I remember one interview particularly well. The hiring manager, a man named Richard Pembroke, looked at my resume with an impressed expression. Then he looked up at me, his face falling slightly. "Miss Blackwood," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "your academic credentials are impressive, I'll give you that. But this is a demanding business. Our analysts work 80-hour weeks. They face immense pressure. They need to command respect from clients who are mostly men in their 50s and 60s. I'm prepared for all of that," I told him confidently. He smiled condescendingly. "I'm sure you think you are. But the reality is, our clients wouldn't take financial advice from a woman, especially one as young as yourself. And frankly, the culture on our trading floor, it's not suitable for someone like you." "Someone like me," I repeated. "A young lady," he clarified, as if that explained everything. "Why don't you consider a position as an executive secretary? We're actually hiring in that department, and with your education, you'd probably advance quickly." I declined. I declined 14 similar offers over the next 3 months, determined to find a firm that would let me do the work I was trained for. Eventually, I landed at a small investment firm called Harrington and Sons. The founder, William Harrington Sr., was unusually progressive for his time. He had seen my application and called me in personally. "I don't care if you're a woman," he told me during my interview. "I care if you can make money. Can you make money, Miss Blackwood?" "Yes, sir," I said. "Better than any man you've hired this year." He smiled at my confidence. "Prove it, and you'll go far in this company." For the next 20 years, I did exactly that. I became one of Harrington's top analysts, developing investment strategies that consistently outperformed the market. I specialized in identifying undervalued companies with female leadership or strong diversity initiatives, something most analysts overlooked in the 70s and 80s. My portfolio returns spoke for themselves, and William Sr. kept his word and promoted me through the ranks until I became the firm's first female partner in 1985. Those were good years. I helped build Harrington and Sons into Harrington Financial Group, transforming it from a small family business into a major player on Wall Street. We expanded from traditional investment management into corporate consulting, retirement planning, and eventually private equity. Through it all, I maintained my focus on ethical investing and corporate responsibility, values that William Sr. shared. He often said that making money and doing good weren't mutually exclusive, a radical idea in the greed is good era of the 1980s. William Sr. and I worked closely together, and over time, our professional relationship evolved into a deep friendship. He began to confide in me about his concerns for the company's future, particularly his worries about his son, William Jr. "Junior has ambition but no judgment," William Sr. told me one evening as we worked late, reviewing quarterly projections. "He wants to make his mark, but he doesn't understand that this business is built on trust and long-term thinking, not flashy moves and quick profits." I had seen it myself. William Jr. had joined the firm after graduating from Wharton, bypassing the usual training program because of his last name. He was smart, very smart, but impatient. He wanted to implement aggressive growth strategies without considering the risks. He cared more about the firm's prestige than its principles. "Have you thought about who will succeed you?" I asked William Sr. carefully. It was a delicate subject. He sighed, removing his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Of course I have. Junior expects it to be him, and the board would probably support that. They're traditional men who believe in family succession. But sometimes," he trailed off. "You think what?" I prompted. "Sometimes I think you would be better for the company," he admitted, "but Junior would never accept that, and it would tear the firm apart." I was touched by his confidence, but understood the reality. Even in 1995, Wall Street wasn't ready for a woman CEO, especially one taking over a family business instead of the founder's son. Later that year, William Sr. died unexpectedly of a heart attack. He was only 65. I found out when my assistant came into my office, tears streaming down her face. The entire firm shut down for the day. People wandered the halls in a daze, stopping at each other's offices to share stories about the man who had built the company from nothing. At his funeral, I stood apart from the family, just another executive paying respects to the boss. Junior gave the eulogy, speaking eloquently about his father's legacy and his own commitment to honoring that legacy. I wondered if he believed his own words or if they were just what he thought people wanted to hear. Later that week, his attorney called me to his office. "Eleanor," he said, handing me a sealed envelope, "William wanted you to have this after he was gone." Inside was a letter and a stock certificate. William had left me 15% of the company's shares in his will, making me one of the largest shareholders overnight. His letter explained his decision. "Eleanor, I've watched you build this company with the same care and dedication as if it were your own child. I trust your judgment more than anyone else's, including my son's. These shares come with a request. Watch over Harrington. Guide it from whatever position makes sense. Junior will resist your input directly, so find another way. The company will need your wisdom in the years to come. I know this puts you in a difficult position. You may face resentment, particularly from Junior, but I've observed you navigate challenging situations with grace and strategy for 20 years. If anyone can protect what we've built while finding a way to work with my son, it's you. Remember our conversations about the true purpose of wealth, not accumulation for its own sake, but as a tool for creating good in the world. Harrington was never just about making money. It was about helping people secure their futures, about investing in companies that deserve to grow, about using financial expertise to build something meaningful. I'm trusting you to remember that, even if others forget." I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring my vision. It was so like William, practical yet idealistic, strategic yet deeply personal. I folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Little did I know how important those words would become in the years ahead. Within a month of William Sr.'s death, his prediction about Junior came true. In his first board meeting as CEO, William Jr. announced his plan to modernize the company, which mainly involved pushing out the old guard, including me. "We need fresh perspectives," he said, looking directly at me as he spoke. "People who understand today's market, not yesterday's." I tried to work with him to find common ground. I invited him to lunch, suggested collaborative projects, offered to mentor him through the transition. But Junior saw me as a threat, a reminder of his father's lack of confidence in him. Perhaps he even suspected that his father had confided in me about his concerns. 3 months after William Sr.'s funeral, Junior called me into his office, his father's old office, now redecorated with modern art and sleek furniture that erased any trace of William Sr.'s presence. "Eleanor," he said, not bothering to stand when I entered, "I'll get right to the point. We're restructuring the senior management team. The board feels that we need to streamline our leadership, reduce redundancies." "Redundancies," I repeated. "That's what I am, after 20 years?" He had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "Your contributions to Harrington have been significant, and we're prepared to offer a generous severance package in recognition of your service." I was 45 years old when I was forced into early retirement, handed a modest severance package, and escorted from the building by security as if I might steal something on my way out. As I stood on the sidewalk that day, clutching the cardboard box containing 20 years of my professional life, I made a decision. I would honor William Sr.'s request, but on my own terms. Over the next decade, I lived modestly off my savings and quietly increased my ownership in Harrington through careful stock purchases whenever the price dipped. By 2005, I owned 22% of the company, more than Junior himself. But owning shares didn't give me the insight I needed to truly protect William Sr.'s legacy. I needed to be inside the building, observing day-to-day operations, hearing the unguarded conversations that never made it to board meetings. So at 58 years old, I dyed my hair gray, changed my name slightly to Eleanor Black, and applied for a position with the cleaning company that serviced the Harrington offices. With deliberately dumbed-down resume and references from friends who understood my plan, I became the night janitor at the very firm I had helped build. The first time I pushed my cleaning cart past my old office, now occupied by a young man who couldn't have been more than 30, I felt a strange mixture of humiliation and power. No one recognized me. Why would they? In their minds, Eleanor Blackwood had disappeared 15 years ago, and the stooped woman in a gray uniform bore no resemblance to the sharp-dressed executive I had once been. I made a conscious effort to change my appearance and mannerisms. I wore no makeup, adopted a slight stoop, and trained myself to move more slowly, to become part of the background. I spoke little, and when I did, I used a softer, slightly accented voice that bore no resemblance to the confident tones I had used in boardrooms. For 15 years, I lived this double life. By day, I was Eleanor Blackwood, major shareholder who reviewed quarterly reports and attended shareholder meetings via proxy to avoid being recognized. By night, I was Eleanor the cleaning lady, invisible but all-seeing, absorbing every conversation, every casual remark, every clue about the company's true direction. I learned more pushing that cleaning cart than I ever did sitting in board meetings. I discovered which executives were having affairs, which ones were hiding drinking problems, which ones were fudging numbers to boost their department's performance. I learned about deals before they were announced and layoffs before they were implemented. One night, early in my time as a janitor, I was cleaning the executive bathroom when two senior managers came in, continuing a conversation they'd clearly been having elsewhere. "It's incredible," one of them said, checking his appearance in the mirror. "Junior's cutting the research department's budget by 40%, but somehow found $12 million for renovations to the executive floor." "You know why," the other replied, washing his hands. "The research department was his father's pet project, Eleanor Blackwood's influence. He's been systematically dismantling everything they built since he took over." "It's not just that," the first one said, lowering his voice. "Word is he's planning to shift our focus entirely toward high-frequency trading, maximum profit, minimum oversight." "What about the ethical investing division?" "Gone by next quarter, from what I hear. Too much work for too little return, according to Junior." They left, never noticing me in the supply closet. But I had noticed them, and I remembered their names, Michael Chen and David Rosenberg. Over the years, I would identify others like them, people within Harrington who still held to William Sr.'s values, who were concerned about the direction Junior was taking the company. I also witnessed how the corporate culture had changed. Under William Sr., Harrington had been known for loyalty to its employees. People stayed for decades because they were treated with respect, paid fairly, and given opportunities to grow. Under Junior, people became disposable, easily replaced assets whose value was measured solely by their last quarter's performance. The cleaning staff felt this shift most acutely. Our hours were cut, our workload increased, and our complaints ignored. My supervisor, Maria, was a single mother of 3 who had worked for the cleaning company for 12 years. When she developed carpal tunnel syndrome from years of repetitive motion, Harrington's new HR policy labeled it a pre-existing condition to avoid responsibility. "It's not fair, Eleanor," Maria told me one night as we ate our lunch in the small break room allocated to maintenance staff. It was 1 a.m., our designated lunch hour on the night shift. "I've been cleaning these offices longer than most of the people working in them have been employed here. Now my hands hurt so bad I can barely hold a mop, and they tell me it's not their problem." I listened as she showed me the medical bills piling up, explained how she was working through the pain because her daughter needed braces and her son had college applications due. In that moment, I almost revealed myself to her, almost offered to pay for her medical treatment. But I knew that would raise too many questions. Instead, I found other ways to help, covering some of her more physically demanding tasks, bringing homemade food to share that would provide leftovers for her children's lunches, connecting her with a pro bono legal clinic that helped her file for workers' compensation. Maria wasn't the only one struggling. There was George, who had been the building's maintenance technician for 20 years, but was being replaced by an outsourced service that would cost less but provide lower quality work. There was Diane from the mailroom, who had worked at Harrington since she was 19, but was being laid off at 62, 3 years before she would qualify for full retirement benefits. There was Kevin, a brilliant analyst who was passed over for promotion repeatedly because he didn't fit the Harrington image Junior was cultivating, meaning he hadn't gone to an Ivy League school and didn't come from money. Through it all, I kept my identity secret, biding my time, waiting for the right moment to use my influence. That moment came 3 months ago when I overheard a late-night conversation between Junior and the company's new CFO, a sharp-edged woman named Vanessa Riordan, whom Junior had hired from a competitor known for its cutthroat practices. I was emptying trash bins in the conference room adjacent to Junior's office when their voices carried through the thin wall. "The Henderson merger is our best play," Junior was saying. "Their client list alone is worth the purchase price, and once we consolidate operations, we can cut at least 300 redundant positions." "The board might push back on the job cuts," Vanessa replied. "Some of the old guards still care about that sort of thing." Junior laughed. "They'll care more about their dividend payments. We're projecting a 15% increase in profitability after the cuts. Besides, it's mostly back-office staff and maintenance services. We'll outsource all of that to contractors at half the cost." "What about the potential for negative publicity?" Vanessa asked. "Mass layoffs don't play well in the media." "We'll time the announcement during the holidays," Junior said. "Bury it between Christmas and New Year's when no one's paying attention. By the time anyone notices, it'll be old news." I stood perfectly still, my hand frozen above the trash can I had been emptying. 300 jobs, including Maria's, including Jorge's, including mine. Not that I needed the janitor's salary, but for my coworkers, this was their livelihood, their health insurance, their ability to pay rent and feed their families. "There is one potential complication," Vanessa said, her voice dropping slightly. "Your father's old shares. A significant block is still held by Eleanor Blackwood." Junior snorted dismissively. "Eleanor hasn't been involved with Harrington for 15 years. She sends a proxy to shareholder meetings and rubber stamps whatever the board recommends. She's probably in a nursing home somewhere, grateful for the dividend checks." My blood boiled at his condescension, but I forced myself to remain still, to continue listening. "Still," Vanessa persisted, "with her share percentage, if she decided to object to the merger—" "She won't," Junior interrupted. "She never has before. Besides, what does she know about modern finance? She was competent in her day, I'll give her that, but the market has evolved. She'd be completely out of her depth now." If only he knew that I had been silently observing every evolution of the market from inside his own building, reading financial journals in my apartment each morning before sleeping, taking online courses to stay current with new investment theories and technologies. In some ways, I understood Harrington's operations better than Junior himself because I saw them from both the top and the bottom. That night, I went home to my Harborview condo, a far cry from the modest apartment my coworkers assumed I lived in, and made a decision. It was time to step out of the shadows. The next morning, I called my attorney and instructed him to arrange a special board meeting. As the largest individual shareholder, I had that right, though I had never exercised it before. "Are you sure about this, Eleanor?" my attorney asked. "Once you reveal yourself, there's no going back to anonymity." "I'm sure," I told him. "It's time." For the next week, I prepared meticulously. I gathered financial data showing how Junior's leadership had actually underperformed the market despite his aggressive tactics. I documented the revolving door of talent that had resulted from his management style, with the average executive staying less than 3 years, a far cry from the stability of William Sr.'s era. I compiled evidence of ethical corners cut, regulatory near misses, and declining client satisfaction scores that were buried in appendices of quarterly reports. Most importantly, I prepared my alternative vision for Harrington's future, A return to William Sr.'s fundamentals, but adapted for the modern market. Ethical investing had only grown in importance since my active days at Harrington, with younger investors increasingly demanding that their money support sustainable, socially responsible companies. I had watched the trend developing from my unique vantage point and knew that Junior was missing a significant opportunity by dismissing it as a fringe concern. For the first time in 15 years, I opened the cedar closet where I had stored my executive wardrobe. The styles were outdated, of course, so I spent the next day shopping for a suit that projected the authority I would need. I chose a tailored charcoal gray pantsuit, simple pearl earrings, and low heels that wouldn't aggravate my arthritis. I also visited my regular salon, where I had my hair cut into a stylish bob and returned it to its natural silver instead of the duller gray I had been dyeing it. The transformation was remarkable. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw Eleanor Blackwood emerging again from behind the disguise of Eleanor the cleaning lady. "You look beautiful," my stylist said, admiring her work. "Special occasion?" "You could say that," I replied. "I'm reclaiming something that was taken from me." The night before the board meeting, I worked my usual shift at Harrington. No one noticed anything different about me. I was just the same invisible janitor I had always been. I cleaned the boardroom extra thoroughly, knowing what would happen there the next day. I emptied Junior's trash one last time, finding a crumpled memo about the Henderson merger that provided even more details about the planned layoffs. I said goodbye to Maria, Jorge, and the rest of the night crew, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and anticipation. Whatever happened tomorrow, this chapter of my life was ending. The day of the board meeting, I arrived at Harrington headquarters at 10 a.m., entering through the front door rather than the service entrance I had used for 15 years. The young receptionist looked up with the practiced smile she reserved for important visitors. "Good morning. How may I help you?" "I'm Eleanor Blackwood. I'm here for the special board meeting." Her smile faltered slightly. The name was clearly familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Do you have an appointment?" "I called the meeting," I said simply, enjoying her confusion. A moment later, the corporate secretary hurried out to greet me, clearly flustered. "Miss Blackwood, we weren't expecting you in person. You've always sent a proxy." Today, I felt it was important to attend myself. He escorted me to the elevator bank, babbling nervously about how honored they were to finally meet me in person. As we rode up to the executive floor, I saw my reflection in the polished elevator doors, a dignified older woman with clear eyes and excellent posture. No hint of the night janitor remained. The boardroom fell silent when I entered. A dozen pairs of eyes fixed on me with expressions ranging from curiosity to alarm. William Jr. stood at the head of the table, his presentation about the Henderson merger frozen on the screen behind him. "Ladies and gentlemen," the secretary announced, "Miss Eleanor Blackwood." Junior's face went pale. He recognized me immediately, not as the cleaning lady who had emptied his trash for 15 years, but as the executive his father had trusted, the woman he had forced out decades ago. "Eleanor," he said, his voice strained, "this is unexpected." "I'm sure it is," I replied, taking an empty seat at the far end of the table. "Please continue your presentation. I'm particularly interested in the part about cutting 300 jobs." The room grew tense. Junior cleared his throat. "We were discussing the Henderson merger and the resulting operational efficiencies." "Efficiencies," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling layoffs now? How efficient?" Junior attempted to regain control of the meeting, continuing with his presentation, but clearly thrown off balance by my presence. I noticed a few board members exchanging glances, sensing the tension between us, but not yet understanding its full context. For the next hour, I listened as Junior and his team outlined their plan for the merger. The numbers were impressive on paper: increased market share, reduced overhead, streamlined operations. But the human cost was barely mentioned, relegated to a single slide with the sterile phrase "workforce optimization." When they finished, I asked pointed questions about the human cost of their efficiencies, questions they were clearly unprepared to answer. How many of these redundant positions are held by people who have been with Harrington for more than 10 years? I asked. Junior looked to his HR director, who shuffled through some papers nervously. I don't have that specific breakdown, she admitted. I do, I said, pulling a folder from my briefcase. 122 of them, people who have dedicated a significant portion of their careers to this company. Miss Blackwood, Junior said, his patience visibly thinning, while we appreciate your concern for long-term employees, business decisions must be based on financial realities, not sentimentality. Is that what your father taught you? I asked quietly. That loyalty is sentimentality? A muscle twitched in Junior's jaw. My father built a successful company by making sound business decisions. Your father built a successful company by understanding that people are its most valuable asset, I countered. He knew that institutional knowledge and employee loyalty translate directly to client satisfaction and retention. One of the older board members, a man named Howard Jennings, who had served since William Sr.'s time, nodded slightly at my words. I made a mental note of potential allies. Finally, Junior's patience snapped. Miss Blackwood, with all due respect, business practices have evolved since your time with the company. These decisions, while difficult, are necessary for growth. I smiled. My time with the company never ended, Junior. I've been here every single night for the past 15 years, watching how you run your father's business. The confusion in the room was palpable. What are you talking about? Junior demanded. I'm talking about my other job, I said, enjoying a moment perhaps more than I should have. For the past 15 years, I've been working as a night janitor in this building. My name badge says Eleanor Black, but I've been here, observing everything, learning how this company really operates when the board isn't watching. The shock on their faces was remarkable. One of the younger board members actually laughed, assuming I was joking. That's impossible, Junior said. Someone would have recognized you. Would they? I asked. When was the last time you really looked at the woman who empties your trash? When was the last time any of you had a conversation with the people who clean your offices after you go home? We're invisible to you, which made my work very easy. I opened my briefcase and removed a folder containing photographs, selfies I had taken in various executives' offices over the years, holding up that day's newspaper as proof. There were dozens of them, spanning 15 years. This is me in your office, Junior, the night you finalized the Apex acquisition in 2012, I said, sliding one photo across the table. And this is me in the conference room during your victory celebration after the IPO in 2015. You ordered champagne. Some of it spilled on the carpet. I cleaned it up. As the photos were passed around the table, the atmosphere shifted from disbelief to uncomfortable recognition. These powerful men and women were suddenly seeing themselves through the eyes of the workers they had dismissed as unimportant. For 15 years, I continued, I've watched this company drift away from the principles that made it successful. William Sr. built Harrington on two foundational ideas, putting clients first and treating employees like family. Under your leadership, Junior, both have been abandoned in favor of short-term profits and executive bonuses. Junior's face flushed with anger. You had no right to spy on this company. I had every right, I countered. I own 22% of this company, more than you do. Your father asked me to watch over his legacy, and that's exactly what I've done. And now I'm going to protect it. I laid out my own proposal, a counter to the Henderson merger that would achieve growth without massive layoffs, a restructuring of executive compensation to reward long-term stability over quarterly performance, and a renewed commitment to the company's original values. Harrington is at a crossroads, I told the board. We can continue down Junior's path, chasing short-term gains at the expense of our people and our reputation, or we can recommit to what made this company great in the first place: integrity, loyalty, and genuine value for our clients. I distributed copies of my alternative plan to each board member. You'll find that my proposal projects similar growth to Junior's, but achieves it through expansion rather than contraction. Instead of cutting jobs, we create them. Instead of squeezing more profit from existing clients, we attract new ones who share our values. Junior scoffed. This is naive idealism. The market doesn't reward values. Actually, it does, said a voice from the far end of the table. It was Michael Chen, one of the executives I had overheard in the bathroom years ago. ESG investing has shown consistent growth over the past decade. Companies with strong ethical practices are outperforming their peers in many sectors. That's a niche market, Junior dismissed. It's the future, I corrected him, and Harrington is falling behind because you're too focused on old metrics of success. The debate continued for hours. Junior fought hard, marshaling arguments about market realities and competitive pressures, but he was increasingly isolated as more board members began asking questions about my alternative approach, showing interest in a vision of Harrington that balanced profit with purpose. Howard Jennings, the board member who had served since William Sr.'s time, finally spoke up. "I've sat on this board for 30 years, he said. "I was here when William Sr. ran this company, and I've been here through Junior's tenure. Both approaches have their merits, but I have to say, I've been troubled by some of our recent decisions." He turned to Junior. "Your father understood that financial success is meaningless if it comes at the expense of the values that define a company. I think Eleanor's proposal deserves serious consideration." Junior looked around the table, realizing he was losing support. "This is absurd," he said. "You're letting sentimentality cloud your judgment. My father's era is over. The market has changed." "People haven't changed," I said quietly. "They still want to invest with a company they can trust. They still want to work for a company that values them. That will never change, no matter what the market does." By the end of the day, the board voted to adopt my proposal with some modifications. Junior would remain as CEO, but with oversight from a new executive committee that included me. The Henderson merger would proceed, but with guarantees of job protection for existing employees. And Harrington would launch a new division focused specifically on ethical investing, headed by Michael Chen. As the meeting adjourned, Junior approached me. The anger had faded from his face, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "You outplayed me," he said quietly. "It wasn't a game to me," I replied. "It was about protecting people's livelihoods and your father's legacy." He nodded slowly. "Did my father know that you were going to become the cleaning lady?" "No," I said. "That was my own idea. He just asked me to watch over the company in whatever way made sense." "For 15 years?" He shook his head in disbelief. "Why reveal yourself now?" "Because some things are more important than staying hidden. 300 families were about to have their lives upended. Maria, who cleans your office every night, wouldn't have been able to afford her daughter's insulin without health insurance. Jorge, who fixes the heating system when it breaks down in winter, is putting his son through college. Sometimes you have to step into the light and use whatever power you have." Junior was quiet for a moment. "I always thought my father favored you over me," he finally said. "That's why I pushed you out when I took over. I wanted to prove I could run Harrington better than he did, better than you would have." "Your father loved you," I told him. "He was proud of your intelligence, your ambition. He just worried that you hadn't learned the most important lesson he had to teach, that a company isn't just a money-making machine. It's a community of people whose lives are affected by every decision you make." "Maybe it's not too late to learn that lesson," Junior said, surprising me. "Would you be willing to teach me, not as an adversary, but as a partner?" I studied his face, looking for insincerity, but finding what appeared to be genuine humility. I would, I said, for your father's sake and for the sake of everyone who depends on Harrington for their livelihood. We shook hands, an unexpected truce after decades of conflict. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of changes at Harrington. I formally rejoined the company as executive chairwoman, working alongside Junior to implement our new vision. Some executives resisted the shift in direction, but many embraced it, particularly those who had been quietly uncomfortable with the company's ethical compromises. The changes at Harrington weren't just cosmetic. We restructured our investment strategy to emphasize long-term growth over quarterly profits. We revamped our employee benefits program, reinstating many of the supportive policies that had been gradually eliminated under Junior's leadership. And perhaps most significantly, we created a new division dedicated to impact investing, using Harrington's financial expertise to support companies making positive social and environmental contributions. My first act as executive chairwoman was to invite all the cleaning and maintenance staff to a special meeting in the boardroom. Maria's face when she saw me sitting at the head of the table instead of cleaning it was something I'll never forget. "Eleanor?" she said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What is happening?" "I have a lot to explain," I told her and the others. "Please, sit down." For the next hour, I shared my story with them, my history with Harrington, my years undercover, and my recent return to leadership. I explained how their conversations, their struggles, and their dedication had inspired me to finally step forward and challenge the direction the company was taking. "But why?" Jorge asked, still trying to process what he was hearing. "Why would someone like you work as a janitor for 15 years?" "Because I needed to understand this company from every angle," I explained. "And because people like you, the ones who keep this place running behind the scenes, have insights and perspectives that never make it to the boardroom. You taught me more than you know." I announced that all maintenance and custodial services would remain in-house rather than being outsourced. Everyone would keep their jobs with improved benefits and a clear path for advancement within the company for those who wanted it. Maria would be appointed to a newly created employee advocacy committee, ensuring that the concerns of all workers, not just executives, would be heard at the highest levels of the company. The changes weren't limited to personnel policies. We began a comprehensive review of our investment portfolio, divesting from companies with questionable labor practices or environmental records. We introduced transparent reporting on our own corporate responsibility initiatives. We established a foundation to support financial literacy in underserved communities, funded by a percentage of our annual profits. Junior and I developed an unexpected working relationship. After the initial shock wore off, he seemed genuinely interested in learning a different approach to leadership. He had his father's intelligence and ambition, but had never been taught how to balance those qualities with compassion and long-term thinking. "I always thought my father's approach was outdated," he admitted during one of our strategy sessions. "I saw his concern for employees as a weakness, something that held the company back." "And now?" I asked. "Now I'm beginning to understand that what looks like weakness in the short term can be a profound strength over time. The loyalty he inspired, the culture he created, those things have value that doesn't show up on a quarterly statement." It wasn't always smooth sailing. Some board members remained skeptical about our new direction. Competitors spread rumors about instability at Harrington following my dramatic return. And the financial press had a field day with the story of the millionaire janitor who had been hiding in plain sight for 15 years. One evening, about 2 months after my return, I was working late in my new office, the same office I had cleaned hundreds of times over the years, now restored to something resembling William Sr.'s original decor. Junior knocked on my door, holding a manila envelope. "I found this in my father's personal files," he said, placing it on my desk. "It was marked with your name and instructions not to open it until Eleanor returns to Harrington." My hands trembled slightly as I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from William Sr., dated just a week before his death. "Eleanor," it began, If you're reading this, then you found a way back to Harrington, just as I always believed you would. I couldn't predict how or when, but I knew that your connection to this company, to our shared vision, was too strong to be permanently severed. Junior will have learned valuable lessons by now, both from his time leading the company and from whatever circumstances have brought you back into the fold. He has always had the potential to be a remarkable leader, but he needed to understand that true leadership isn't about power or profit, it's about responsibility to others. I hope you two can find a way to work together, combining his energy and innovation with your wisdom and principles. Harrington was never meant to be just another financial institution. It was meant to be a demonstration that business can be both profitable and humane, both successful and ethical. I've missed our conversations, old friend. In my final years, I often found myself wondering what you would advise in difficult situations. Now Junior will have the benefit of your counsel directly, as I once did. Thank you for keeping your promise to watch over what we built. I looked up at Junior, tears in my eyes. He never gave up on either of us, I said softly. Junior nodded, his own eyes suspiciously bright. He saw something in both of us that we couldn't see in each other. It took us 40 years to catch up to his vision. The following Monday, we held a company-wide meeting to formally announce Harrington's new direction. All employees were invited, from senior executives to maintenance staff, breaking with the tradition of separate announcements for different levels of personnel. Junior and I stood together at the podium, presenting our shared vision for Harrington's future. We explained how we would balance growth with responsibility, profit with purpose. We introduced new mentorship programs designed to develop talent at all levels of the company. We unveiled a profit-sharing plan that would ensure everyone who contributed to Harrington's success would benefit from it. As I looked out over the assembled employees, I saw hope on their faces, something that had been missing during my years as the invisible observer. I saw Mariah sitting in the front row, still amazed at the turn her life had taken. I saw Michael Chen, energized by the opportunity to lead our new ethical investing division. I saw younger employees leaning forward in their seats, engaged with a corporate mission that went beyond mere money-making. And standing beside me was Junior, not the adversary I had fought for decades, but a partner in creating something that honored his father's legacy while adapting it for a new era. That night, I returned to my Harborview condo and stood at the window, watching the city lights reflect on the water. I thought about William Sr. and what he would make of all that had happened. I thought about my years pushing a cleaning cart through darkened hallways, gathering information and building relationships that would prove invaluable. I thought about the moment of revelation in that boardroom when I finally stepped out of the shadows and reclaimed my voice. Most of all, I thought about power, how it comes in many forms, how it can be hidden in unexpected places, how it means nothing if not used in service of something larger than oneself. My name is Eleanor Blackwood. For 15 years, I was invisible, but I was never powerless. 3 months have passed since that company-wide meeting, and Harrington Financial Group has undergone a remarkable transformation. Our new approach has attracted attention throughout the financial industry, with several competitors scrambling to launch their own ethical investing initiatives in response. Our client base has grown by 15%, with many new investors specifically citing our corporate values as their reason for choosing Harrington. But the most profound changes have been internal. The walls between departments have begun to break down, with cross-functional teams collaborating on innovative projects. The annual employee satisfaction survey showed the highest scores in 20 years, and the revolving door of talent has slowed dramatically, with several key executives who had been planning to leave deciding to stay after witnessing our new direction. Mariah now leads the Employee Advocacy Committee with remarkable effectiveness, bringing forward concerns and suggestions that would never have reached leadership in the past. Her daughter's insulin is fully covered by our revamped healthcare plan, and she's taking advantage of our tuition assistance program to pursue a degree in business administration. George's son was offered an internship in our IT department based on merit, without any strings pulled. though I admit I was pleased when I heard the news. Kevin, the brilliant analyst who had been repeatedly passed over for promotion, now heads our research department and is developing a proprietary model for evaluating companies based on both financial performance and ethical practices. Junior and I still have our disagreements, some quite heated, but they're productive conflicts now, pushing us toward better solutions rather than power struggles. He's learning to balance his ambition with empathy, and I'm learning to embrace innovation rather than clinging to tradition for its own sake. Last week, I invited him to dinner at my condo, something that would have been unimaginable a year ago. As we sat on my balcony overlooking the harbor, enjoying a bottle of wine his father would have appreciated, Junior asked the question I'd been expecting since my revelation. Were there ever moments when you wanted to give up, when the disguise became too much to bear? I considered this carefully. There were many, I admitted. Nights when my back ached from mopping floors, when I heard executives mock people like me, when I questioned whether I was accomplishing anything meaningful. There were times I almost revealed myself out of sheer frustration. What kept you going? Different things at different times, I said. Sometimes it was your father's letter, reminding me of the promise I'd made. Sometimes it was witnessing a particularly troubling decision that I hoped to eventually correct. But most often, it was the people I worked with, Mariah, George, and the others. Their dignity in the face of difficult circumstances, their dedication to jobs that offered little recognition or reward. They inspired me to persist. Junior nodded, looking out at the harbor lights. I never saw them, he said quietly. Not really. They were just functions to me, not people, expenses to be minimized. That's what happens when you view a company solely as a financial entity, I told him. You stop seeing the humanity that makes it work. I'm seeing it now, he said, and I can't unsee it. We sat in companionable silence for a while until Junior raised his glass in a toast. To Eleanor Blackwood, he said, who taught me that true power doesn't come from a title or a corner office. It comes from understanding what really matters and having the courage to fight for it. I smiled and raised my own glass. And to William Harrington Sr., who saw the best in both of us, even when we couldn't see it in each other. The future of Harrington Financial Group isn't certain. Nothing in business ever is. We'll face challenges, make mistakes, and sometimes fall short of our ideals. But we're building something that matters, something that honors the past while embracing the future. And we're doing it together, executives and maintenance staff, veterans and newcomers, everyone contributing their unique perspectives to a shared vision. As for me, at 73, I'm not planning to work forever. In the coming years, I'll gradually step back from daily operations, making way for new leadership while remaining involved as an advisor and board member. I've established a foundation that will eventually receive my Harrington shares, ensuring that a significant portion of the company remains dedicated to its core values regardless of who sits in the executive suite. But that's a concern for tomorrow. Today, I have a company to help rebuild, a legacy to honor, and 15 years of invisibility to make up for. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever been dismissed or underestimated because of your age or position, I want you to know that you're not alone. The world is full of people like us, people with hidden depths, hidden knowledge, hidden power. Subscribe to Other Life Unfolded to hear more stories about people who refuse to be invisible, who found ways to reclaim their power and make a difference when it mattered most. These aren't just stories. They're blueprints for finding your own voice and your own power in a world that too often tries to silence people like us. Join our community today by hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications. Remember, the most powerful person in the room isn't always the one everyone's looking at. Sometimes it's the one no one sees at all. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who feels overlooked or powerless, share this video with them. Your simple act might be the catalyst that helps them discover their own hidden strength.